Top of the morning, Dan, and in for Amy J this morning is Sean from Elmwood Park. Hillsdale College is a special place. I've been getting their Imprimis newsletter since I was a high school student. I've had the occasion to speak up there. I have good friends up there. Scott Bertram, also a Bennett Academy graduate.
Stop showing off.
A radio guy who runs a radio station there. Of course, President Arnn is an outstanding intellect in his own right. It's one of the, believe the only college that accepts no public money.
It's fantastic.
No taxpayer dollars for their students. It's really an oasis there in Michigan, southern Michigan. And so thinking about Hillsdale College, which is in the business of traditional education that focuses on the great canons of Western civilization, the founding principles of this nation, on this Memorial Day weekend, as we honor those who sacrificed their lives for freedom.
The irony I can't take.
In combat. And what would they say today about Americans who are sacrificing freedom? They sacrificed their lives in combat for freedom. We're willingly sacrificing our freedom. Is that how far we've come? For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Thomas Connor, who's a professor of history emeritus, Hillsdale College. Professor Connor, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on your show.
I know you have penned a piece about Memorial Day entitled "The Most Unusual Memorial Day." Give us your thoughts as we stand here today.
Well, the reason for that particular title, Dan, was simply because of the unusual circumstances that the country has lived through for the past couple months, to be celebrating Memorial Day amidst all this fear and anxiety and frustration and, in some cases, outright anger over the prolonged abridgments of our freedom. This struck me as kind of, well, there's never been another occasion in my lifetime quite like this. So, but I think it's important amidst all of this concern that we have over coronavirus, it's important not to lose the real meaning of Memorial Day.
Aside from the obvious irony of a free country celebrating freedom at the time of being locked down by their government, haven't you seen over the last couple of decades, 3 specifically, an actual rejection of the Enlightenment that this country was founded on? Where is the talk of self-governance and the right of the individual in any policy?
Yeah, it's cause of great concern. I'm turning 70 next week, so I've been around the block a few times and seen quite a bit, and so have many others in this country who share this concern. I think one of the problems is I think we're an educational institution here at Hillsdale, and I appreciate the kind words you said about us. But I fear that too many Americans are just unaware or ignorant, whether consciously or voluntarily or inadvertently, but they're ignorant of the principles on which the country was founded, and they're ignorant of the values that the country has sought to stand for, and they're also ignorant of a lot of the history, the sacrifices that have been made by each generation of Americans thus far to preserve our freedom and our right to self-government. And we like to say here at the college that self-government begins with self, and to the degree that personal character has broken down around the country, that's put the whole system at risk, I fear.
And thinking about the whole system being at risk, I mean, I think about this from a cultural perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the idea that we're sort of in the Robert Curry at Claremont Institute calls it Fauciism. I don't know if there's a difference between Fauciism and Gramsciism. The idea that you have a small group of people that exercise cultural hegemony and can impose their will, even unfairly, with the support of many people who will suffer from their unfairness. That seems to me to be afoot in so many ways, even pre-pandemic, but perhaps it's even more accentuated now during this pandemic and the response to it because of what is becoming clearer and clearer in terms of the disproportionate pain and suffering that is being distributed.
Yeah, I mean, this what's been happening, Fauciism, as you refer to it, is a very clever way of capturing exactly what's going on. I think we've allowed ourselves to be just a bit too dazzled by what science, that word, science does not speak in one voice on this particular issue, but it's been the progressives' dream for more than 100 years to have experts in a position to basically tell us how to govern ourselves. And if we're in a war against this microbe, as President Trump and many others have said, one of the things that wars do, history has shown this, is they do accentuate, they accelerate trends that have already begun. And I fear that this particular war, once we get to the other side of it, assuming we ever do, is going to leave us in a place that's even more concerning than the place we're in right now.
Well, see, to me, the thing that's even more concerning that you were talking about, people don't have, a very small percentage of people have an understanding of the nation's founding, of the principles upon which the nation was founded, of our natural rights as enshrined in the Constitution. But that's less concerning to me than the loss of sort of the American common sense realism that that formed so much of our can-do attitude throughout the generations as we're reflecting on previous generations. It was interesting. There was a survey done by Harvard University on attitudes about reopening, and they find 6 in 10, I was talking about this with Brett Baer earlier in the show, 6 in 10 owners and managers of small, medium-sized businesses said non-essential businesses should reopen. 52% of households where someone lost a job or went on forced unpaid leave also said they should reopen. Georges Benjamin, executive director of the American Public Health Association, saying in comment to those data points, they're basically saying they think the economic risk outweighs the health risk. I don't think they're being callous about the health risk. I think they're making a judgment around how they value risk. Right, exactly. If only the Panjan drums that have dictated our public policy and wooed politicians to be lockdown and bus artists would have made those same sorts of assessments that people are making at the individual level now in the wake of the devastation that has been imposed. We've lost the sense of trust your common sense as a free person, because don't do that, because we have these experts, these technocrats, and look at their degrees and look at all the abbreviations after their names and so forth. And these are the people who are going to run your life for you.
Yeah, no, I'm in complete agreement with your assessment, and it is precisely this breakdown or this disappearance almost of common sense that is most worrisome. I have a colleague in the history department who started saying weeks ago about the lockdown response to the spreading of the disease, that he said we're committing suicide to keep ourselves from dying. Mm-hmm. And that to me is a common sense way of looking at it. And I do believe that there are many, many, many people in this country who seem to believe that life should be risk-free, and certainly never intended by the good Lord who created us all for people who live in this world to be risk-free or without danger nipping at our heels of various sorts. And this is not a prescription for cavalier ignoring of the danger of the disease, but it's the sense of balance that we seem to have lost.
Professor, I have a question for you. In a country that's founded on law, and the law that is supposed to be my shield, that over the course of the last couple of decades has clearly become the government's spear, are you shocked by the lack of legal challenges? I have been asking since this started, where are the lawyers? We finally found a way to shut up the lawyers, but are you shocked by that when the law is supposed to protect me from this kind of tyranny?
Yeah, I have been very surprised by the casual response of people to, oh, okay, I have to shut my business, I have to stay home. Oh, okay, the governor's telling me to do that. I guess I have to listen to him or her. No, that has bothered me and surprised me a great deal. It's good, I think, to see people beginning to come back alive. This sense that no, governors don't issue laws; legislatures make laws. My elected representatives. Not that governors aren't that, but I sent people to Springfield or to Lansing, whichever, to make laws in my name. But just yesterday, of course, the legislature in Michigan lost a case. They had sued the governor over the extension, the repeated extensions of the lockdown, and they lost that case. I believe that was because of technicalities based on the way in which the emergency law or state of emergency law in Michigan actually reads. But no, we're in a dangerous place, and I would love to see legislatures, for example, in states or the courts actually start coming down in favor of this reassertion of individual rights. Absolutely.
President Trump announced that he'll be lowering the flags on all federal buildings and national monuments to half staff over the next several days in memory of the Americans lost to coronavirus. And also we're going to lower the flags to half staff on Memorial Day to honor the military too. Oh, by the way, the juxtaposition, you mentioned it too, the idea that this is a war. I find the war metaphor for this pandemic and for those who have died as a result of COVID-19, and that's a tragedy. That is not the same thing, I'm sorry to say, of somebody, whether they were conscripted or did so voluntarily, fighting on behalf of this nation against oppressive regimes for our freedom. Those two things are not the same. I don't like the metaphor, and I don't like the idea that we're memorialized victims of a particular disease over victims of versus victims of every other disease from which people die.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I remember back early in the pandemic, back in April, when the expert voices, so-called, started saying, we're really going to get hit, we're really going to get hit. It was the week after Easter. And I believe it was the Surgeon General. I may be wrong about that, but he actually said, well, this is our Pearl Harbor moment.
Yeah.
And I don't even know what he meant by that, but no, it angered me. It's frustrating to see how little a sense of history people have. No, there's no comparing Pearl Harbor with what we've been going through. I completely agree with this and with that. And the dead from our wars died in service to the country. Which means all of us. Now, there are certainly a lot of first responders, who have died in service to the sick patients from this terrible disease that they've been treating. But no, Memorial Day was meant for something quite different, I think, from what we're experiencing now.
He is Thomas Connor, professor of history emeritus, Hillsdale College. His essay, A Most Unusual Memorial Day, I'll post on social media. Thomas Connor, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Dan. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Pleasure is all ours, and you joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
The health of your employees and customers is a big concern. Protecting those who keep your business moving is so important. Vans Industrial can help.
Hi, I'm Dave Van Camp, president of Vans Industrial. As a business owner, I want to keep my employees safe during this